With that, I'd like to introduce Mike Sharrow. Mike joined C12 as a member, like you guys are considering, in 2010. And within a year, he became an associate chair, serving CEOs across the San Antonio market. In 2013, he and a business partner actually acquired Central Texas C12 region and grew it to 8 chairs and served over 150 members in that market. And then in 2016, Mike became the CEO of the C12 group. As we promise in C12, we want to be example of all we promote. So not only is Mike the CEO of C12, but he is also an active member in a C12 group in the San Antonio market. So Mike, we really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your busy schedule to be with us today. And at this point, the Zoom screen is all yours.
Well, hey everybody, it's a joy to get to join you, and I'm going to spare you. I've got a face for radio, so I'm going to use some visuals to help illustrate this conversation this morning. And as Chris alluded, my hope is that whether you're coming in pretty well informed and this is part of kicking the tires, or you were loosely invited by somebody and you're curious, I'm hoping that by the end of this, you sense the purpose of God and why he had you here. And that maybe there's even things you hear in this conversation that are part of God connecting dots of desire or frustration or intrigue for you, as it was for me when I first heard about it 10 years ago. So you'll hear us talk a lot about this idea of great business, greater purpose. And as Chris mentioned, I drink the Kool-Aid pretty well. I'm a C12 member, so I drive up to Austin, Texas, and I'm part of a group there. And then I get a chance to lead a small business. Essentially, I run a business in San Antonio that's got 18 employees that then supports a network of missionpreneurs, as we call Chris and Ron, almost 120 of them now around the US, Brazil, and Southeast Asia primarily, who then get to support almost 2,700 leaders like you. And so it's a small business with a lot of kingdom torque, we like to say. So I'd like to unpack kind of what is it, why is it, what's the context of this as you consider whether or not you're a fit for what we're about and how to go visit a national group. So first of all, we're part of a bigger movement of God. God's been doing stuff in the marketplace for a long time. We are just an expression of that. I would argue if you go back in scripture, it goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and even before them, God's been using entrepreneurs and small business owners for thousands of years as agents of his work. But in an era where we've got a lot of, particularly in the West, a post-Christian kind of motif and people growing up less and less exposed or maybe even trusting institutional religion, the power of what happens when we live out the gospel in the marketplace is just underscored. And so back in the 70s, Billy Graham said he believed, hey, that's where one of the next great moves of God is going to be. If there's going to be a wholesale awakening type event like our country's experienced historically, it would likely come out of faithful people in the marketplace. Henry Blackaby said similar things in the 90s. So 3 decades ago, just about, is literally this month, the first week of October in 1992 is the first C12 group started in Florida. There's a group in Tampa and a group down in Sarasota area around this idea of could you merge a intense, high-class business mastermind group? Could you take the best of industry trade association groups and secular peer forums and all that represents from a business excellence perspective, and could you merge it with a biblical worldview and a missional heart? And literally it was, could you take a peer group and Bible study fellowship and put them in one experience where there'd be no daylight separating our faith and our business pursuits? That was the experiment down in Florida in 1992, and it began to grow. It worked, it replicated, dozens and dozens of leaders joined groups there, and they started trying it in Georgia and other states, and then it began saying, okay, the Carolinas, and then it just kind of spread across the country. And so now we've got groups in about 38 states. And then about 3 years ago, we began this experimentation of would this work in other cultures? And I couldn't even tell you how to quantify my ignorance on would that work or not. But by God's grace, we had groups launch in Asia and in Brazil. And so this past January, we launched in Singapore as well. And literally in the last week, I've been talking to leaders in Cairo, Egypt, South Africa, the Netherlands, UK, Beijing, Hong Kong, and Rwanda about this serving CEOs in those markets. And so it's proving to work and scale regardless of your industry. regardless of your stage of life and business, and seemingly regardless of culture. And our mission, we're essentially an equipping organization. We are here to equip Christian CEOs and business owners like you to really build a great business. We're passionate about building great businesses, but doing it for an eternally significant greater purpose. And what do we mean when we say greater purpose? Because that word can be used fairly generically. Well, we've got a pretty specific idea in mind. See, we have this paradigm that there's a business as a ministry operating system, that every one of us as followers of Jesus, that your business is a ministry. The only question is whether or not it's effective or a good one. And so how do we run a business where every component of that business is truly done to the glory of God? And how do we help our operations and everything we do live out this call we have as followers of Jesus and not have that be situational? And so at the end of the day, we help people understand that and install that in your unique context. And the power of the C12 is this recipe of what happens in a C12 meeting. It's the power of peers. We've got a very consistent model, whether you go see Ron Sieb's group in Southern Indiana, whether you go see Chris Wise in Northern Wisconsin, or if you go to Orange County, or we got a group in Southern Maine, or go down to Brazil, while the people at the table would be different. And there'd be dynamics of the way they handle the conversation. The content, the structure, the framework, and the tools to draw out the power of peers in a unique way is consistent. And it really is the game-changing factor for changing the way we lead and the results we get. Now, this has been particularly true in 2020, in a year where there's been dramatic disruption sparked by the pandemic, and then everything else this year has brought. But sometimes it can feel like, as a leader, what I know is fixed, and the expanding universe of what I need to know is just paralyzing, and it's rapidly expanding. And so that can create a problem for us as leaders to go, well, how do you keep up with the expanding realm of best practices and ideas and information and insights of what's working and not? Well, one of the ways to do that is to augment your own knowledge through the power of peers. And so part of the power of a C12 group is to have like-minded peers that are from different industries than you, but share faith. So we share the definition of success and what matters. And we're in a collaborative, sharing, transparent environment to help close the gap between what I know and what I need to know. And we believe that there's no way to separate the business or the ministry side. We believe that for too long, sometimes I was at a conference last week where the Christian music artist Lecrae made the statement that the word Christian is a fantastic noun. Sadly, in the marketplace, it's oftentimes a poor adjective. And that's tragically too true at times. And we'd like to redeem that we should be leading the charge when it comes to business excellence, virtue, beauty, and goodness. And so we want to shatter that perception. And so if you come to a C12 meeting, heads up, we believe in this Buffalo culture. We like to press into issues. We like to deal things head on. We like to not only answer the questions you may bring to a table, but question the answers that you are assuming about that. And we believe it's serious business. And if we're going to be serious about building a great business, then we've got to look at all the different dimensions to it. So we offer, in the context of a C12 meeting, a lot of different things. So joining a group is not just coming to sit at a table. It's not a discussion group. There's a lot of things that go into being a C12 member. There's the group, which has got learning and tools and all sorts of aspects to it that we've been engineering for almost 30 years to make sure it's high performing in its experience. But we also realize that we need new ideas to close the information gaps. We bring curriculum to the table. We bring seminars, conferences, tools to help leverage peers, both in your group and leveraging the national network. We all as leaders struggle with, okay, you learn, but then how do you do stuff? How do we actually execute to that? So we got all sorts of tools around disciplines of execution to support you in that. And then there is not a cookie cutter solution. Well, we all are going to learn together. It comes down to personalizing us. That's why we got one-on-one coaching and unique benchmarking to your context and a whole bunch of tools to help grow you and your team within the context of where you're at. And then we step back and we look at all those things saying, if we're doing this well, there should be economic value add gains, there should be cultural value add gains, and there should be eternal fruitfulness, what we call spiritual value add, in your life and in the business that you get to steward. And people join C12 and are in it for a long, long time. About 30-40% of the original groups in Florida are still members. We're actually about to have our 5th generation leader in one of those companies where literally there's been 4 succession rounds, and the newest leader is in C12 to keep running that now 5th generation family business. But the equation is simple. We stay in this constant gymnasium mode around leadership. It's not a hospital. You don't come to C12 and get fixed. You join as a fitness club to keep yourself, rehabbed where you need to, but getting stronger and stronger together. And as you do this, it just gradually transforms you and it transforms your business. Now, the beautiful tension of C12 is that we are serious about bringing these oftentimes separate domains into one conversation. This Venn diagram of work as worship, business as ministry, but then also bringing in the life in order. So how do I balance I'm a child of God, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and Jesus cares about who I am and how I am just as much as what I accomplish. And so we're serious about bringing all those 3 into a coalescing pursuit. And part of the secret, and this may be one of the things that I'd love to challenge your thinking with, is we then look at the idea of being a steward in this business as a ministry pursuit, meaning that we must look at the very culture of our companies and ask, how does the gospel influence that? And then we look at these 5 domains of an eternally balanced scorecard. And every month we are learning best practices around some component of that. We are assessing our current reality against that. And we are pursuing better and better excellence and reforming it or transforming it with the biblical worldview. And we journey on this every year. And so we align our conferences, our content, our learning all around this 5-point alignment matrix. And then within C12, we have this overall business as a ministry, BAM framework. So how do we help each other focus and clarify mission, vision, values? And every year go through an exercise of going, okay, what's most important this year? And as we look at those 5 domains of the business, what are the strategic objectives that we've got to be pursuing? And what are the right goals and KPIs? And how do I actually act upon that and lead my teams to execute to that? Well, we've either got learning or tools or systems that kind of cascade down around those things, and yet allowing it to be adapted and to fit whatever stage of business you're in and whatever industry of business you're in. We've got everything from small family businesses to multi-billion, multinational dollar businesses. The same framework applies. It just begins to change some of the execution tools. So we are all about results. So if you're checking this out, this is not a casual deal. It's why we want to front load this with a chance for you to know what this is, because we want to deliver ROI to you and your stakeholders. You may be a CEO running a business that's owned by others that may not share your faith, and we believe that we should be good stewards for them and they should love the results they see. But we're also measuring things in eternal ROI, both the transformation you and your family, those you lead, the customers you serve, and the industry and community you're in. So what makes a good C12 member? Well, you've got to be, as Lencioni would say, humble, hungry, smart. You got to be open to learning. You got to want to learn. You got to want to grow. You've got to be growth minded. That's really one of the most key hallmarks of a good C12 member is, do you want to grow, personally growth, and grow your business? And then are you open to these Buffalo conversations? Are you open to getting feedback and input that maybe you get nowhere else? Maybe you have nowhere else that's even a safe place to offer and receive this kind of feedback. Well, those things all factor into what we call an ideal C12 member. And it's a serious proposition. We're looking for growth stage companies. So our content is not great for startup. We don't explain how to bootstrap and do initial funding. We're really focused on how do you grow your business through teams, through people, through strategy, through process. And it is a mutual investment. And so part of what we're going through this whole process to make sure you realize this is a serious deal. This can be a game changer for your life and business. And it's something that you got to put something into. And so there's a 7-hour meeting once a month. It is a retreat away from the business to work on the business, where we do learning, peer counsel, and all the kind of stuff you've heard about and we'll hear more about. And we do that. We ask you to make sure you've got a clear calendar and guard that day like you would a vacation or a key sales meeting or some other event, and be able to make at least 10 out of those 12 meetings a year. We got a veterinarian out in Eastern North Carolina who didn't miss a single meeting for 14 years and would pay $2,500 a day to hire vets to go run his clinic while he was at his C12 meeting because the business couldn't stop. And so it wasn't just his dues. He was funding people to run the clinics while he was gone. But he went, this is the one thing I can't miss. And so very much in C12, you get out of it what you put into it. There is a financial commitment. You're going to be paying monthly dues. The business would fund this as an investment in your professional development and in the growth of the business. You got this one-on-one with your chair who's going to be helping you personalize and adapt all this stuff into your context. And then you're going to be choosing action items. We're going to learn on a monthly basis. You're going to go, you know what? I'm going to implement that. I'm going to improve that area. I'm going to have that conversation. I'm going to make that intervention. Those are things that requires for you to get the value out of C12. But again, we're about accountability and results. On a monthly basis, you're accountable to the things you said you do. We also tell everyone you come to C12, if you do these things for a year and you get the end of it and go, yeah, these are nice people, smart people, valuable, but it just didn't move the needle for me. We don't want you to stay in. In fact, we'll offer you a refund of your dues if this is not going to deliver the excellence we promised. So it's a serious proposition around changing things. Again, it's this 5-point alignment matrix. Let's go and grow all these dimensions of our business. Let's realize that if God owns everything and I'm a steward, then my success is actually what he says success is in each of these areas. And at the end of the day, that's what our groups are about. Bringing those different worlds of our leadership together, providing a forum where we can learn and grow in these pieces. And when I first found this 10 years ago, I was incredibly cynical, didn't believe this would be real, and joined, and it was transformational for me. And obviously 10 years later, it's still changing my world in a positive way. And so if you qualify and if this resonates with you, I hope you will take up Ron and Chris on the invitation to take the next step of actually seeing a group and seeing that this is part of how God would help change the future of your leadership and your business. So with that, I'm going to hand things back over to Chris and Ron so we can hear from some cooler people than me who can add some local context to this as well.